Hello, Assalamu alaikum. In this video, we will learn about the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. For short, it is COPD. So, in this video, we will learn about the inflammation, immunity, and the destruction, the tissue repair and destruction. So, let's understand about the basically etiology, the how it can affect, and the risk factors like cigarette, smoking, environmental factors, and a lot of more things. So, amplifying process we will discuss, but the smoking is the 90% causes of the COPD. The COPD is the chronic inflammation due to the asthma as well as the bronchitis or emphysema. Remember, the amplifying processes is the innate immunity, the oxidative stress, cellular activation, and somatic mutation, as well as epigenetics. The asthma is also involved. The COPD, emphysema also, and the bronchitis also. I have a video, you can watch that. Acquired immunity, stress response, and extrapulmonary effect and genetics also involved will lead to cellular processes. The cellular processes mean the inflammatory cells recruitment of other immune cell, and T cell activation will lead to a cell mediated immunity activation and humoral immunity activation and autoimmunity activation and transcriptional activation, and the mediator release from the immune cell and tissue repairs and proliferation, as well as apoptosis and systemic inflammation can cause the COPD. The chronically it will progress and will lead to cause more severe COPD. The pathological process is the mucus gland hyperplasia. In this way, the mucus gland hyperplasia will lead to more production of mucus, will lead to impede the oxygen move into the air sac of the alveoli. And in this way, the small airway and obstruction and the centrilobular emphysema and corticosteroid resistance and the bacterial colonization, and on the other hand the there is a lot of problem associative process is the atherosclerosis, cardiovascular disease, and metabolic syndrome and lung cancer can be caused by these pathological processes, and associative processes will lead to clinical outcomes. Clinical outcome is the asymptomatics, will lead to mild symptomatic, and will lead to exacerbation and the gold severe gold state 4, the sphere. Gold state means the global initiative for chronic obstructive lung disease will lead to cause death even. So let's understand about what happened with in the air, inside of the air space, in the lungs contain air sac, and inside is the air sac. So remember, the air sac contain surfactants as a mucus like surfactants, which that is important for the production of mucus, and but the excessive mucus is not good, and the surfactant is different but the mucus is different. For example, the macrophage, the pulmonary macrophage are present. The residential macrophage will affect this allergen, will lead to produce interleukin 1 beta and tumor necrotic factor alpha. Sorry, transforming necrosis factor alpha, and it will lead to cause inflammation. And also this cigarette will basically CXCL10 and P10 and CLL5 and rantis will produce is the inflammatory mediators. While this is the amplification is due to the viruses and oxidative stress and genetic factors as well as bacteria, which that will lead to produce mucus, the mucin protein, which that is able to defend against these mediators. And in this way, the infected cell also produce the mucin due to the hyperplasia of the hyperplasia of the mucus gland. So in this way, it will lead to infected cell produce interleukin 6, CXCL8, interleukin 8, and CCL2, and MCP1, and LTP4. In this way, the airway smooth muscle will be activated, and the air smooth muscle activation will lead to destruction due to the CD8 T cell activation and interferon gamma and IP10 production. The IP is the induced protein, and the interleukin 6 CXCL8, and that is inflammatory mediators will produce, and in this way it will kill. A cytotoxicity will occur, and the IP10 and TSLP IP and TSLP will is the produced as an inflammatory mediator from the smooth muscle cell, and the mast cell activation will lead to COPD increase. The chronic bronchitis will occur due to the constriction of the bronchioles, and this is the mast cell produce histamine for constriction, and leukotriene and other inflammatory mediators will lead to vasoconstriction. But on the other hand, this inflammatory mediator, due to the infected epithelial cell of the pulmonary lungs, will recruit the neutrophil and systemic inflammation due to the CRP. The CRP is the reactive protein, and the interleukin 6 and TNF alpha will lead to produce, and in this way the neurotrophic immigration, the chemotactic movement of the neutrophil will occur, will lead to serone proteases, and the oxidants CXCL8, interleukin 8, and LTB4 will produce. And in this way, the neutrophil basically will lead to endocytosis of the infected cell, which that is infected cell. And in this way, the neutrophil will increase the inflammation and go into the mucus side. And in this, the neutrophil will produce the neutrophilic elastase enzyme, will recruit, and in this way recruit the macrophage, and recruitment of the macrophage will lead to erythrocytosis through macrophage will occur for clearance of the process and inhibit the bacterial growth. Anyhow, this is the inflammation will lead to chronically inflammation activation. Let's begin to understand the chronically processes like the dendritic cell which that is involved. But for example, the when smoking will go into the oxidation occur, and in this way the CD8 T cell activation and is CD8 T cell, and on the other hand the dendritic cell activation will lead to due to the other pathogenicity will lead to activate the T cell receptor for the T helper 0 cell. This T helper 0 cell will activate the several type of T cells like T helper 1 cell and T helper 2 cell. T helper 1 cell will proliferate itself and replicate and recruit more T helper 1 cell and T helper 2 cell, which that is the chronic inflammation. And this chronic inflammation will recruit the eosinophil and will lead to induced sputum will occur. But on the other hand, here is the T regulatory cell will inhibit this inflammation, but the interleukin 15 will produce from the infected cell will inhibit the T regulatory cell. In this way, the chronic inflammation will progress. While on the other hand, the B cell, which that produce the antibodies, anti-elastin antibody and anti-epithelium antibody will humoral immunity will be progress will lead to more inflammation and destruction of the epithelium will lead to rupture of the alveoli will decrease the surface area. When decrease the surface area will lead to less oxygen perfusion. While the apoptosis and senescence will occur, the tumor necrotic factor alpha will recruit the macrophage and the inadequate apoptosis will occur. But in this way, the macrophage, which that will go into the for the production of oxidants and MMP9. MMP mean the matrix metalloproteases 9 and 12, which that will be basically lead to cause more inflammation. because it is the proteases enzyme. And on the other hand, the fibrogenic cytokines will produce, like for example, the tumor growth factor beta and endothelial growth factor and vascular endothelial growth factor, will lead to fibroblast proliferation, will lead to fibrosis. And on the other hand, the inflammation due to these oxidants, and the MMP 12 is inflammation and remodeling a mucus hyper secretion, and the airflow obstruction will lead to progress the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. This is the COPD. I hope you make sense about the immune response and how it can progress, and the continuously the chronic inflammation will lead to cause the complication. And if you like my video, please make sure to subscribe, like and share. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. For this time, bye.